any kind of man-made or other disaster that affects planet Earth adversely may be viewed in the opposite way for those who are trading the markets. So famine, war, make the markets go up. And for anybody who's playing the markets and investing, that's more of an opportunity to make money. The commodity trader's nightmare is they wake up in the morning and the headline in the newspaper says, "Peace declared."
This will be a journey to a parallel world. A world with a bad reputation.
When there's market dislocation, no matter how it's caused, you should try to use it to your advantage. It's like never waste a disaster, almost.
Volatility is what we need. Volatility is our friend. When things are calm, we can't make too much money.
But also a world seemingly detached from reality.
Which part of your career was the most profitable?
Oh, I hate this question. 9/11.
It's gone! It's the whole tower! Holy crap!
9/11 was.
They knocked the whole freaking thing down!
That was my best year ever, and I hate that, to be honest.
There is a world made up of numbers. A world where you have to be the smartest or the fastest. A world connected by radio waves and fiber optic cables. A world where you can make money if you think you know what the future holds. A world of fear and desire, where you can win or lose. I call this world Planet Finance. For most inhabitants of planet Earth, myself included, Planet Finance is a complex, invisible, but influential world. And for many people, a world with an enormous appeal.
Actually, in my pocket here, I have, for example, this is like a 250 grams of gold. Okay, I want to sell these, right? So there's this phrase, this kind of motto, buy low, sell high. That's kind of what you want to try to do. All right, you're given 1 million. The goal is to increase that amount. When you look at all these numbers and graphs, it can be quite overwhelming, but there is one very important aspect to think about, is about trading it and about trying to make money.
Here it seems so easy to create wealth. An ever-growing world where capital yields better returns than labor.
But this is really where all the magic happens.
For me, it's a distant world that only comes into view when the financial markets crash.
This is CNN breaking news. The Dow collapsing its worst single
As they did in 2008, when investment bank Lehman Brothers collapsed, followed by the European debt crisis, which brought Greece to the brink of ruin. Or at the start of the pandemic, after the first lockdown was announced, all markets crashed at once. A unique event in history.
An historic day here on Wall Street because investors are expecting a potential global recession because of the coronavirus.
It takes 2 months before the traders of the New York Stock Exchange are even allowed back on the trading floor. Lockdown after lockdown, the whole world holds its breath. And around the globe, shop windows are boarded up for protection against potential looters. But on Planet Finance, soon there is no real worry anymore. On the contrary, the stock prices skyrocket again. And not only those of the luxury brands.
Like always, the market moves and then goes right back to normal. So if you survive the initial shock, markets tend to go back to normal.
So while planet Earth is still picking up the pieces, planet finance is already making big bucks again. How is that possible? How can the interests of planet Earth and planet finance be so different? Looking for answers, I arrive in the mansion-dotted woods just above New York City. Most of the inhabitants of planet finance aren't exactly eager to provide insights into their world.
I wrote 2 books sitting here. Music going, good place to write.
We don't want to tell the truth about, some of the pricing structures here and how they impact, the real world and, that kind of stuff.
This former trader does want to talk. He spent decades on the trading floor, but now has his doubts about the way planet finance functions. Plus, he has already made his pile, so he can speak freely to me.
We create money out of pieces of paper, worthless pieces of paper, worthless. But, the world decided that they had value. And so we found ways to create, make a living from that stuff. It's just a construct so that, people can make money. I tell these stories and I laugh about them and everybody's eyes roll back into their sockets. And after a minute and a half, this is boring, I gotta get out of here. It doesn't hold any interest for anybody. Nobody gives a shit. Except for Michael. He knows the truth about all this stuff as well as I do, He's really the guy you should interview. I mean, he's amazing. He's a very bright guy.
Michael. That's Michael Marks, another former floor trader. He turned his back on Wall Street a long time ago.
The nature of Wall Street is every man for himself. Kill or be killed, eat or be eaten. I mean, that's the nature of the beast. And so that wasn't something that resonated with me enough to stay there.
The nature of the beast. To understand what that is, and what planet finance has become today, it's important to him to first explain how things used to be on the trading floor.
Now, let's see. Here we go. Is that upside down? So this dates back to the mid-'70s and before, and these were all around the side of the trading floor. Every transaction was registered there. There were 2 board boys, as they were called, for each board. One on the left side and one on the right side. You needed one right-handed and one left-handed because they were, writing as quickly as possible. The exchange had a reputation of trading everything. There was silver coins, there was imported boneless beef, and there was a cotton exchange, there was a cocoa exchange, there was a coffee and sugar exchange, and all of these exchanges had been set up maybe 100 years ago as a marketplace for merchants in those particular businesses to meet and buy and sell.
So it was a marketplace where buyers and sellers would meet. In the 1970s, their bids were still chalked onto the so-called book.
What you see here is the book?
Mm-hmm.
This is the book?
Yeah, this was the pre-electronic book. Yeah, yeah.
A blackboard. On the left-hand side, the amounts and which traders had sold. And on the right-hand side, which traders on the floor had bought and at what price. So you could read the price action.
By being on the floor, you saw orders coming in and out. You would see somebody start to buy, for example, and you might know from his demeanor, is this going to be an order to buy one contract or 1,000 contracts, you know, or this guy is always a big buyer or a big seller. So just by being there, even though if you did not see the orders, you still had a sense of the flow and the feel, and you would hear it and smell it. Because in the mid-'70s was when New York was on the verge of bankruptcy. So the streets were dirty, there were, you know, drug dealers all around and whatnot. And the New York Merc was one of those about 10 blocks north of the World Trade Center. Then you would walk into this magnificent building, 5 stories high, and there were 2 enormous doors, maybe 12 feet high, that were pretty soundproof. So on the outside, you didn't hear much, and it was almost like walking into the Coliseum, and the doors would open, and then you would be blasted by this roar of noise and sounds and smells. And I couldn't stop smiling when I walked in. I had no idea what it was or how it worked, but whatever it was, it grabbed me. There was no code, so if things were quiet, they'd be doing the New York Times crossword puzzle in the ring. They'd be eating their lunch and pizza in the ring. They'd be smoking on the floor. There'd be fist fights, and you're sweating, you're rubbing elbows, you're getting stabbed by pencils, and you're getting spit on.
On Planet Finance, traders are already a special breed, but floor traders can even be seen as a dying breed. Michael Marks has relocated to the neighborhood where he once grew up. The only ex-colleague he still regularly sees is Dan Dicker.
All right.
So where's your car?
There it is. Is that your driveway?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Don't want it.
No, I've got that house too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's under construction, but I needed a little more room here, so
The hell? Buy another house. Good plan. Good plan.
They did well for themselves on the trading floor, and now look back with a mix of slight nostalgia and diabolical glee.
I would go into the World Trade Center and I would walk up the 10 blocks to get to the exchange. One morning I'm walking up and everybody on the street is looking at the towers. I'm walking in the opposite direction. They're all looking at the towers, and I look and there's a guy climbing up the side of the towers.
You are trespassing on private property.
So I get to the exchange, and of course everybody's looking. And what do you think they're doing? They're betting. Yeah.
How many floors will go before he falls?
Yes. It's not
perfect.
that they're betting whether he's going to make it or not. What floor is he going to
fall
from?
Yeah. That's classic. That is perfect floor trader stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
So can I describe you well as being a small trader then?
Oh, I was minuscule. I was the smallest of the small for this. And it was very, very, very stressful, very exciting, very lucrative, and scary, all at the same time.
In what sense scary?
I always use this analogy, and if you can't put this on TV, I understand. But imagine being a man in your 30s, walking into a place, dropping your shorts, taking your testicles out and stick them on a table, taking a cleaver and handing them to the next guy and daring him to cut them off before you can yank them back. Every day. That's what it was like.
I think part of the allure was no one understood when you came in from outside. What is this? How does it work? How do you do this?
It was pure capitalism. It was absolutely its purest form. It was the Turkish bazaar, come alive. Come one, come all. Everyone participates. It looks like a sporting event with money.
The market as a sporting event with money. Apparently, that's what it takes to determine the price of a product. Meanwhile, Michael Marks was elected chairman of the exchange. He saw the opportunity of starting a new market, a market for a product of which the price, up till then, had been established in an obscure way. A market that would go on to determine the global price of crude oil, and one that would even grow into one of the biggest markets in the world.
How do you start?
How do you start a new market? When you start out, you don't know. It's almost like a chicken and egg. I'll use it if you use it. You know, you'll use it if I use it, but how do we know that each of us is going to use it? In the 50s and the 60s, most markets in the world were managed and price controlled. Oil had always been a monopoly or an oligopoly, which meant that there was one person or a group of people who were controlling the production and setting the price. You didn't know what prices were. They would meet in a tent. I'm exaggerating, but all the producing countries would meet and they would powwow, and then someone would emerge from the tent and say, the price of crude oil is now 8, or the price of crude oil is now 10. So that was how prices were set.
Until well into the 1970s, the price of oil wasn't determined by supply and demand, but by what the powerful oil companies and oil-producing countries asked for it. So Michael Marks thinks there has to be another way to do this, for a product that's in such high demand around the world.
I just felt that oil should be priced in a free market environment rather than by a cartel. And it seemed obvious to me. I couldn't understand why others didn't see it that way. I mean, a couple of people who I knew said, you know, it'll never work. The major oil companies will come in and they'll kill it. After, I think when the Shah was overthrown in '79, that's when things really got out of control. That created a big disruption in supply.
The unrest in the Middle East makes one thing clear. Uncertainty about the supply of crude oil means uncertainty about the price.
So those kinds of things created more risk. And that's the essence of what a futures market is. It's great to use it for speculation, but the whole idea is to offset risk. If there's no risk, there's no reason for a futures market.
Without risk, you can't start a market. Michael Marks isn't going to sell the oil himself, but starts a market for so-called oil futures, to be bought and sold on the trading floor. A future is a bet on the price of crude oil going up or down in the future. From now on, the global price of oil is determined through speculation.
So the atmosphere on the floor of the exchange was, you know, excitement, right? You know, thrilling, you know, the market's up, opportunities to make money. But for me, that's when I realized the consequences of it. When things were getting supercharged, yeah, as they are in the markets today, you know, in some form, there's a disconnect between what may be happening in the stock market and the grain markets for Wall Street and what may be happening on the ground.
That's kind of the joke of all these financial markets, right? They're supposed to be these sort of value creators, right? We use these markets so they can assign value to things that we really don't have any idea of what their values are. And that happens a lot. But what also happens a lot is the other thing where, you know, the monster in the machine sort of gets away from the purpose that it was created for.
The monster in the machine. Inside that machine, traders have to make use of any unexpected event that occurs.
He's like in Dracula. I mean, how could you not like him?
Someone who spent years doing that on the Chicago trading floor is oil trader Bob Iacchino.
Whether it's the Russian currency crisis or 9/11, the London train bombings, the Spanish train bombings, volatility is what we need as active investors and active traders. During the attacks of 9/11, the volatility was something I still haven't seen, neither before nor since. So for people who don't understand what volatility is, the very simple explanation of volatility is it's an expanding or a contracting of price ranges. When volatility expands, the price ranges of that asset expand. That's what causes volatility to expand. When volatility contracts, it's the same thing. Volatility has expanded in spurts, in periods of time.
So there is a lot of volatility when, during an unexpected event, the prices go all over the place. And that gives a savvy trader a chance to make a lot of money.
Because things change and the price just goes haywire. When things are calm, we can't make too much money. I was on the floor when 9/11 happened. I was in the interest rate pit. And the interest rate pit was one of the most active when the planes first hit. And we had banks of phones in front of us, and the phone rang, and then the other phone rang, and then the other phone rang. It was very common for us to have two phones at once on the trading floor. I would have 4, 6. I would have 2 in each hands, and I'd be going like this, yelling at someone to pick up the other phone. People just screaming, what's going on? It's interesting when you hear people say what's going on when they can actually see what's going on. There's a weird psychological thing that they want it to be explained as to why it's happening, but they're saying what's happening. Like you can see in front of you what's happening, but if I tell you why it's happening, how is that going to change what's happening? That's kind of a shortcoming of a lot of traders is they ask what I consider to be the weakest question in the hierarchy of questions when you're an investor, which is why. You're sitting there wondering why something's happening, and while you're wondering why, it's still happening. So you have to react.
So you are a what person?
I'm a what person, yes. Why comes later. Why is a hobby? Why is fun for me? But what is what I do for a living?
Our trader survived 20 years on the Chicago trading floor by not asking why something is happening on the market. Meanwhile, planet finance is growing ever faster in value than the real economy. And planet finance is starting to bulge at the seams.
I said, this is what a retired commodity trader does, feeding the birds. See, I've made the transition from what do you call it? Planet finance to planet Earth. Thank you.
As it turns out, Michael Marks got out right before the big market expansion.
Floor trading was very lucrative and very profitable. You had to be a member of the exchange to buy and sell.
So it was a club.
A club, yes, yeah, a club.
And were you like together owners of the club, or?
Yes, yeah.
It was a club, a very interesting club. But yeah, it was like a club. And just being a member of the clubhouse was a very big deal in the club.
Until the beginning of this century, only the members of an exchange could trade directly on it. But now that system has had its time.
So that the memberships had a value. And so there was this transition when exchanges went from being a club to being public.
A stock market that floats itself on the stock market. An exchange that becomes a company with shares, forcing its club members to sell their membership. Forcing? Let me put it this way. They receive an offer they can't refuse.
I bought a seat very early on in my career.
So what did you pay for?
$56,000.
$56,000.
56. Well, I sold it. I sold it in 2000. I shouldn't say this, but I sold this in 2006 for $11.5 million.
What? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
It was a good investment. So you were just lucky.
Just lucky. Just lucky.
It was like hitting the lottery, but it wasn't like one person hitting the lottery. There were 400 floor members that hit the lottery all at once. I mean, it's a story that's never been told, and it's extraordinary. If you can imagine, you can't. I mean, how can you imagine something like that? So what did it mean for the exchange? Then, the exchange went into electronic trading.
Around the turn of the century, exchanges across the globe become electronic. Now millions of people have a buy and sell button at their fingertips, on their computer or trading app. And along with these new customers, Planet Finance continues to grow. Of course, New York and Chicago are the mecca of the financial markets, but Planet Finance spans the entire globe, from the US to Frankfurt, Dubai, and all the way to Tokyo. Here at the Tokyo Stock Exchange, floor traders used to yell and gesticulate wildly as well. Today, it is more like a spaceship, where transactions are carried out by a computer. The role of humans is now reduced to keeping an eye on that computer.
世界に先駆けて、日々オープンする東京証券取引所の役割を占うような、その日がどのような一日になるのかっていうような、目安として世界中の投資家に注目されているマーケットというふうに捉えております。の兆しというか、
Is it possible for a market or anyone to really predict the future?
そうですね、予測不能な事象が起きた際の訓練であったり、そうですね、定期的に行い、備えてはおります。今は、マーケットは常に動いている生き物のようなものだというふうに考えております。常に動き続ける生き物のようなものだというふうに感じております。
Yet it's a creature that ping-pongs financial data between payment apps, banks, businesses, and stock markets around the world. Across a high-speed network created specially for a very select group of clients, all the stock markets worldwide are interconnected. 1 millisecond can make the difference between profit and loss. To understand how this works, I visit the designer of this network, the existence of which most people are oblivious to.
We serve the people that buy and sell on the exchange, and it's mostly the professional traders. So things happen here, things happen there. People here need to know what happens here, and they need to know it very quickly. We're a bit the postal service of the 21st century.
And so what types of information are being sent from one place?
Oh, you would be very disappointed. It's super simple information. It's really saying, did the market go up or did the market go down? Or if you don't send anything, the market didn't do anything. It's very, very simple.
And so why do they come to you?
It's not because they love me, it's because we're fast. You're either fast or you serve like, second-tier people. You know something's gonna go up and you buy it first, you probably win one increment of price, but if you can do it many, many times, then it accumulates to a sizable revenue.
So you are connecting the world's exchanges?
Yes, we're really connecting the most important ones.
Don't forget, the trading floor as such doesn't exist anymore. Transactions now take place in data centers. Impenetrable fortresses where machines trade and compete with other machines. Boxes located in residential or industrial areas far away from the financial centers. In places that, ideally at least, are free from dangers such as earthquakes, nuclear disasters, and terrorist attacks.
Have you ever been inside an exchange?
Yes.
We try to get into an exchange. Just how does it look like? Could you describe it?
It's horribly boring. It's like rows of computers with a lot of air conditioning, which is very noisy, and you have all these lights going bip, 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 bip. It's not fun. Like, there's nothing to see there.
Perhaps there is nothing to see, but thanks to these super-fast connections, the distance between exchanges is now so small that time and place have practically become one. Especially since the exchanges of Amsterdam, Brussels, Paris, Dublin, Lisbon, Oslo, and Milan are all located in one and the same data center, in Bergamo, Italy.
It's like Milano, high-fashion data center. It's clean, it's not noisy, it's just beautiful Italian design. What's interesting is it's a little bit like a beehive. So everyone wants to plug to the queen as closely as possible. Some exchanges organize their data centers so that the distance to the queen, to the matching engine, is always the same.
What's a matching engine?
It's just another computer. It's a computer which takes buy and sell orders and matches them. That's why it's called a matching engine.
The matching engine. It's the modern version of the trading floor. The book is now electronic. Supply and demand meet here. This is where the price is set. The consecutive prices form the price action. Without a matching engine, there is no trade, no market.
On a computer, information will travel from one port to another port, and the routing it takes, the physical routing, will impact the latency. So that's a very physical thing. It's not a physical thing that you'd be interested in, or that 99.999% of the people might be interested in, but it's a physicality that matters to professional traders.
But apparently, for this 0.001% of professional traders, this speed is important enough to roll out a network that's worth hundreds of millions of euros. How does our physicist do that? To show how this works, I've come to the east coast of Japan, because this is where the global trading day opens, and where, from the other side of the ocean, a special fiber optic cable enters the continent. Financial data is sent through this cable, such as the closing prices of the Chicago Stock Exchange, or a new interest rate.
海底ケーブルがこの辺からこう入ってるっていうのは昔から知ってはいるんですけど、結構詳しいことは全然わからないですね。何かいろんなものがこう通信されてるんだろうなって、そんなことぐらいしか、知らなかったです。生活してて気づくことはなくて。
Where the cable comes ashore, it runs straight to a so-called landing station. And from the antenna on top of that landing station, the financial data is sent at the speed of light over the paddy fields, over the heads of the visitors of an amusement park, to the data center of the Tokyo Stock Exchange, nearly 100 kilometers away.
So how fast does data travel through these connections?
So the interesting is nobody cares about the absolute speed. People only care about relative speed. You don't need to arrive fast, you need to arrive first. And it doesn't matter if it takes 100 milliseconds or if it takes 10 milliseconds. As long as you're first, you're fine.
Speed is a relative concept. But those milliseconds can actually make the difference between billions of profit or nothing.
Globally, my clients probably make up for more than half the volume on the big exchanges. It's huge. My favorite place where we're installed is on a mountain called Jungfraujoch, and it's an incredibly beautiful place. When I go on vacation now, and before I used to look at churches, now I look at antennas. You know, it's just, it's the only thing I see.
And could you show us some of the equipment that you put into the towers?
Oops. So that is a typical radio. This produces the signal, and it's directed to the antenna, and the antenna shoots to the other antenna, which could be 100 kilometers away.
If you plan a connection to one exchange and another, how do you go about?
It's super simple. So first you have to not be on the side of the flat Earth people. You have to recognize the Earth is round. So you drop a pin on one exchange, you drop a pin on the other exchange, and you draw a line between the two. And of course, it's not a straight line because it goes around the Earth. So it's called a geodesic. And what you want to do is you want to put your towers on the geodesic, that they need to see each other. Well, my business is very predictable. I do a very simple plumbing in a very complex world.
We started out with chalk on a blackboard, and this is where we are now. On Planet Finance, the future already takes place, milliseconds from now.
Any knowledge of order books, buy, sell, bid, ask?
What then is the role of the trader in this network of cables, antennas, and machines?
All right.
This former high-frequency trader, who bought and sold within milliseconds, initiates a group of econometric students into the game of Planet Finance.
Let's cause some chaos. Black Swan.
Yes, I'm in.
All right, here we go. The bid for 40,000 there. I don't know if anyone wants to sell to that 40,000. Okay. Another bid for 35,000. The The 34,900 is trading. Oh, look, there's a bid of 35,000 there.
Oh, I've almost messed up.
It has to be about fairness, and the person who's got the lowest offer and the highest bids have the priorities. You've got to think, do you want your orders resting in the book to capture these opportunities? Okay, that's, again, somebody bid for 35,000.
Where did my money go?
You lost it.
And that person's trading. The 35,000 is trading. Is anybody else wanting to be on that 35,000 that's trading?
I think it's mine. I think it's mine.
Yeah, I got 2 million euros. I got 1.5. Damn.
Oh, lots of prices traded all the way to 30,000. Whoever bought at 30,000. Oh, just out of everyone's reach.
Should I get it?
Who's making money? She is.
Did it feel like you always were in control?
No.
No. Nowadays, it's done a lot by algorithms. You've got like these bots that are doing these, and it's about, but it still doesn't mean you can just leave it to the bot. It's about configuring that bot, thinking about the strategy behind that bot, because in the end, it's your ideas of what's going on. But the main thing that I think will always be there is that requirement for being calm under pressure. So when you see a big event happening, what emotions go through in your head, it's like fight or flight kind of thing. It becomes quite incredible how markets can actually react and in certain situations.
How hard is it for traders to keep their footing among all these algorithms? Are their feelings of euphoria, greed, and fear different from when our floor trader voluntarily put his balls on the table, day after day? To find an answer to this, I travel far away from Wall Street, to the American West, to a famous ski resort overlooking Dollar Mountain, and to a woman who is allowed to look inside the minds of traders.
Trading and investing is literally the hardest mental game on the planet. There's nothing that's certain about it. Everything's ambiguous. It can change every moment. It never ends. It's a bit like poker, except no hand ever ends and no one wins the hand. And there are no absolute meaning of the cards. You get marked at the end of the year. There's typically a December 31st number that artificially ends the game. So like in sports, your job is to make something happen. In markets, your job is to react to what's happening.
This neuropsychologist, who once worked as a trader, helps the newest generation of traders to play the game and to recognize their own emotions and then put them to use.
Hey!
She regularly has sessions with her clients, and by way of exception, I get permission to listen in.
You're not the only one. I mean, maybe there's somebody out there that it has really made sense to, but it's not what I've been hearing, so. Most of my clients are professional investors / traders.
Yeah.
Where do your clients are located?
London, Singapore, Hong Kong, Australia, New York, obviously, California. Surely as many outside of the United States as it is in. Yeah, okay. So, if you could just listen to your intuition, you would do what? Short the S&P? I talk to them twice a week at first. A lot goes on in a market in a week. Many of them talk only to me about some of the things they talk about. I had one recently where he wanted his wife to join to talk about the stress that he came home with and how she could see whether he made or lost money that day and, you know, its effect on the kids and whatnot. He's in a really volatile market and, you know, he's working 18 hours a day and you can imagine his wife is like, yeah, they had a nanny or even two, but help, I can't do this. you know. So, I mean, on some level, you're afraid, right? So if we did like 1 to 7, how afraid? The guy, they'd give him $1 billion to trade. I mean, he's 40-something. And they get on the phone with me and say things like, but I didn't make money today. I didn't make money every day this week. I made money 22 days before that, but I didn't make any money this week. I'd be like, you know, they're still like, they held themselves to this really actually irrational, and I don't use the word irrational too much, but irrational standards. And they ask you to talk to the biggest investor. That doesn't mean anything. Sorry, I'm laughing at you. So I'm laughing at you because it's like, I don't think they're worried about your performance or your perspective. But you made money, didn't you make money? The nature of playing the market game, no matter who you are, is assessing what you think you know, how it will play out, and being simultaneously aware there's stuff you don't know. There's usually a reason why a market moves happens, and some group of people, meaning some amount of money, are trading on that particular reason. So you have these different groups of people with different amounts of money, with different sets of beliefs, and coming up with some schema or mechanism to interpret that and to evaluate the risk of what you might not know is how you win.
I've always had this kind of notion that the market is kind of there to make you humble, you know, because every time you have this winning streak, whether you're a researcher or trader, whoever, invariably the market will come back to punish you and you'll lose that winning streak. It's just impossible to be this perfect predictions or machine. So
right.
There's this like constant chipping away at your ego.
Well, first of all, it's the hardest game on the planet. You know, it's completely uncertain and it's completely ambiguous.
It's kind of this interplay between the superego and the ego, and or in theological terms, it's like God and man. And you know, you're trying to become a god yourself, but then God reminds you that there's only one God, and you're going to be punished, and you're going to be, my smite will come upon you or something.
Like, I'm constantly asking my clients, what's the worst going to happen? How could it go wrong? Well, what will it mean if you're wrong about this? And it's uncomfortable to deal with the fact that you can't know. And it's that feeling that caused you to do something. It's that feeling that it caused you to recommend. It's the lack of that feeling, let's say concern, doubt, anxiety, fear, panic, that might cause you to hold back. So you have to come up with some lens through which you see what seems to be like a chaotic system. Just the ability to tolerate taking a risk.
So you have to enjoy risk.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Enjoy navigating, enjoy playing with it.
So it's about playing with risk. In the following episodes, I will meet the inhabitants of Planet Finance, who, day in, day out, enjoy risk. I will show how risk can be a business model.
So how do you make a business out of that? Well, the business is being able to predict that risk and price it.
This one's personal. Is this a little too personal to go into?
How you can make risk work for you.
And sometimes using the risk to your advantage means not losing a ton of money.
I won't offer investment tips or wage a crusade against bankers or the top 1%. But I will take you on a journey to a world which is ours, yet also a planet in itself. I call this world Planet Finance.